30%.
Bunch of white guys doing a podcast.
Yeah, fucking
Hell
white
yeah,
guys.
True
bro.
aristocracy resides here.
Hell
I
yeah.
think it was just a delay.
Fucking white
This
guys.
is actually Plato's aristocracy. Congratulations, guys, we did it. Bunch of white guys doing a podcast.
Alright.
Yeah, fucking
We achieved
True
it.
aristocracy.
yeah, let's go. We're live. Okay.
Sweet. This is.
Are we live?
Finally.
Yeah, we're live.
Alright.
I can see everything on our end too.
Alright.
I'm gonna shift it over here
Alright.
just a tiny bit, just so I can get everyone who's.
I'll
in
give
the
my
video.
intro when
Um.
you're ready.
Yeah, you should be able to do the intro right now.
Hello, everybody. We are the Base Leftists, and today we are hosting our first episode of the Political Pundits Podcast. In this podcast, we'll be talking about a variety of things. We'll be talking about discourse on political TikTok, the state of political TikTok in general, and just general politics. However, this is pretty freeform, so the conversations will go in and out of different topics. I'm going to introduce the guest we have right now, Kosher White, I believe it is, correct?
Kosher white wine. Yeah, at kosher
Kosher
videos
White
on
Wine, all right.
kosher white wine everywhere else.
About as white as it gets. And then we have leftist liberals.
Yo, it's Jinping.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, dude, I'm a fan, dude. Nice.
Oh, Cheeps, get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry about that.
Is the channel not
Yeah.
private or?
Yeah, no, it should be. 𝗷𝗘𝗌𝗷𝗘𝗃, 𝗷𝗘𝗃
It's just because
fanpage.
Chiefs
You
has
wanna?
some shit. Yes,
Wait, what was that?
Would you like to introduce
sec.
yourself a little bit?
Oh yeah, my name's Harrison. As most of you probably know, 𝗷𝗘𝗃.fanpage. That's my TikTok. Go follow me.
True. Base as fuck. All right. Uncle Reed, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
What's up? I'm Uncle Rita, and I'm honored to be on here.
Hell yeah, brother. Super base. All right. So our first topic for tonight is going to be anti-Semitism on TikTok with regards to the Free Palestine movement. So I'm sure, as many of you are aware, if you want political TikTok right now, there's been a lot of discourse around when it's appropriate to bring up Free Palestine and the context to which it's being used on a lot of people who are like openly Jewish or support or are Zionists on this app, and how they kind of. I'm so sorry about this guy. 1 second.
Just honestly,
Yep.
just kick
Alright,
him.
sorry about that.
Yes, symmetry has been
So
restored.
essentially, yeah,
Sorry,
don't,
he has the
don't
he has the
unban him.
famous role, so he's. I should just take it away from him.
yeah. Wait, why does he have? Okay, yeah, he's been.
Yeah,
Anyway,
take
so
it,
yeah, we're
get
just
it
gonna
away.
talk about that. So have you guys experienced this, or seen anything, or made a TikTok about it?
I've certainly seen it in comment sections. Right, you'll have a video that's completely unrelated to the state of Israel, but you'll have Free Palestine comments under it. And I do think that is, to a certain extent, anti-Semitic, because at that point, you're conflating Zionism with Judaism, which is obviously something we shouldn't do.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think it's like more of a directed attack. I don't know if they're doing it to necessarily like intentionally, but I feel like at some point it's like, where do we draw? Because obviously, like, I think a lot of us here would at least to some degree support a two-state solution, or just leave Free Palestine. However, I think there's such an extent we have to take this with regards to like discourse and how you want to push your message. Like this shit is like just pretty fucking unacceptable. I mean, anti-Semitism is like a big fucking problem, even especially in the U.S. Even though like Jewish people make up like 1 or 2% of the population, they account for like,
Okay.
I don't know if this is true, but like about 50% of like the hate crimes. Like it's insane. Like in this country. So like I definitely think it's something we have to be talking about. Kosher, right? Did you make a video about this? I can't remember.
I don't talk about that specifically. A lot of people just say Free Palestine in Jewish people's comments. I think that's a pretty cut and dry issue. You need to allow Jewish people to exist outside of the political actions of the state of Israel. And people should have the freedom to exist outside those actions. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And oftentimes they don't, because people are asked about Israel when they're not
There we
associated
go.
with Israel.
There we go.
That's it.
Sorry, guys. The window capture system was having a bit of an issue. It's there. We got it. My bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it got to a point where like I kind of had to like make a video because like the conflation is like, it's like if people are, I kind of like, it's a really hard because like it's a really hard thing you have to deal with, right? Because like I don't want to like necessarily like portray like my, because obviously I support the Palestinian people in this, but like at the same time like I also want to make it very clear that I don't support it's really hard, you know. I kind of like want to draw the line. When I made my TikTok, I think I was pretty clear, but people were in my comments section saying, well, actually, did you know that Zionism means just the Jewish people, Jewish homeland? I'm like, no shit. I don't know. Sometimes, especially on TikTok, when you try to communicate certain messages, it seems like it kind of gets lost in like what's trendy and like what's happening. I guess, yeah.
I'm pretty vocally like anti-Zionist, right? And I've even been given the label as like anti-Semitic, but I would certainly never conflate just like Jewish existence with support of Zionism.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really fucking weird. I hate Zoomers on TikTok.
Yeah, I think it's an issue on the left, especially because we can get so kind of entrenched in our ideologies and what we believe that we tend to put people into certain buckets that they might not essentially fit in. So we see someone who's or someone who is a Jew, and we automatically conflate them with being pro-Israel or Zionist, when in fact that might not be the case. They could just be a Jewish person that doesn't believe in Zionism and could even be for a Palestinian one-state solution. So I think it's very indicative of the fact that we should try to be more inclusive within the community and try to, be more, ask people what they think before we just assume things about them, of course.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, totally, man. I think it's broadly speaking a problem in terms of like how we internalize a lot of discrimination towards people. I mean, just regarding like the basis, like I don't know. Like, I feel like I think it's like on. I think I wouldn't consider it on a micro level because I think it's kind of like overt, but I think it's kind of like analogous to like different kinds of like ways in which we kind of like inflate certain ideas and belonging to certain people, and we like presuppose that these people believe a certain thing. I don't know. I definitely do think it's a big problem. But
Yeah,
I guess if nobody
back
has
off
any-
that, I think that anti-Semitism in terms of it on the left, it's pretty similar to racism on the left and sexism on the left. I mean, there's been leftists like predator TikTokers, right? And I think often we forget that that's a problem for us because we're the ideology that fights against anti-Semitism, fights against sexism and racism, but it's just as much as a problem in our community as most others.
Yeah, totally.
I think that because there's this idea that we're seen as a community that's against a lot of these things. There's an idea that the community is immune to those same things, which is obviously not the case. People go out and say, "Oh, I'm against anti-Semitism. I'm against all this," but when they see it, they like to think that because it's part of a community that is ostensibly against the thing that they're condemning, that it doesn't exist in that community, which is obviously just not the case.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, what do you think about this particular issue? Do you have any inputs on it?
I haven't seen much on it, honestly. I mean, I know we kind of the only thing I can really think of is some people like more like tanky or Nosbol types kind of conflate the bourgeoisie with the Jewish people, but that's about all I've seen for it.
Yeah,
of course,
Yeah,
Free Palestine,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's because they are tankies and Nosbols. I mean, their brains are already pretty smoothed out. I highly doubt they have the complexity to
Most Nosbols don't.
be able to delineate between.
I'm sure we can all on the podcast, regardless of political affiliation on the left. Nosbols are bad people.
I mean, they're literally just fascists who say bourgeoisie and proletariat. So
I know.
They don't have any.
True.
They don't have
I
any.
I had a comment to make about the Jew thing. So I think that like it's a problem like more broadly across society that tends to happen in leftist spaces a lot because we think that we're more like righteous because we pretty rightly understand that like we are the progressive group in the country that's actually more inclusive and we're leading to like better outcomes for more people. But what comes along with this, and especially the introduction of meme culture, right, which like has introduced a lot of the mixing of like the spheres of high and low art, that causes a lot of these things to become jokes in our communities, right? Like oh yeah, like it might be like someone would use it as a joke that like we can just like someone is Jewish, haha, therefore Israel, right? And like what we see a lot is that people take this to an extreme, and a lot of people on our side who are just a little bit racist, right, use it to justify their preconceptions, and they use it to more broadly categorize people into categories that they probably don't belong in.
Yeah,
Totally.
I definitely agree.
I think we have this kind of like, I think there needs to be a lot more introspection on the left. I think we, obviously I do think we have like the affirmative or like the correct position on most issues. However, I think due to that we kind of lose sight of like keeping ourselves in check, because I think we attempt to like pride ourselves on like, oh, obviously we're more aware of these issues, so obviously we're more cognizant and like keeping ourselves under control and like being introspective. However, I think like a lot of the times that can be messed up, and I just generally don't think that's the case sometimes with a lot of leftists.
Right, and we need to criticize ourselves too, because the big problem is that we will just dismiss anybody who disagrees with us generally, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that a lot of it too comes from the bad faith way a lot of these things are called out. A lot of right-wingers single out anti-Semitism on the left, which exists, as a talking point, right? They are the ones that conflate anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism a lot of the times. It is reactionaries. Trump says it all the time. Trump calls the left out for being anti-Semitic, right? When, of course, we know that the right is far more anti-Semitic. But it is a way. I mean, in England, I think it was a massive blow to the Labour Party was calling out anti-Semitism in the party, which I'm sure it exists. But it was a tactic of the right. It was a tactic of reactionaries to call out this anti-Semitism. So when we see things called out on the left, a lot of the times, not all the time, maybe not even most of the time, it comes from bad faith reactionaries. And we tend to dismiss that because of who it's coming from, which I think makes it so that a lot of people don't take things very seriously. We're used to, Trump saying the left is anti-Semitic. It's like, okay, who cares?
It's a fallacious, correlation. God, what's the fucking word I'm looking for? They think that Israel and the Jewish people, or the Israeli government and the Jewish people, are the same like entity.
Right.
So like whenever you hear like a Republican or a right winger going like conflation, yes. So like the right will go, the left's anti-Semitic because we argue, the Israeli lobby shouldn't have influence in our government. That's much different than the Jewish people control the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very different.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
some people can't delineate. That's the
I've been
problem.
called anti-Semitic for saying, oh yeah, the AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, has a corrupting influence on politicians because the person was like, oh, that's an anti-Semitic trope. Which I think at that point, when you're labeling things like that as anti-Semitic, you actually do start to, the word loses weight almost, because it just gets thrown around and everything.
And that's happened in the US a lot. I mean, at this point, conservatives are so used to being called racist because they are. They don't even care anymore. Like, I feel like it used to be more so, at least, that was an issue. Whereas now, mainstream conservatism, they don't really care about being called racist. And as a result, they become more racist. We've devalued a lot of words. I think they get devalued in different ways, too. But we just throw around accusations. And I think that is something the left is guilty of. Even if somebody is racist, it's a heavy word to use. Same with fascist. We throw that around a lot too. I think that's also losing meaning. And that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thing with fascism is, though, I don't think it has such a fluid definition. Or like, I just don't think the definition for fascism is like really cohesive to where we can attribute certain characteristics to it. We can have a broad generalization, but I like with many other things, I think it's like such a broad way of painting like a certain way of thinking or a certain ideology. I think it's kind of hard, but I think that's kind of a way with a lot of things. I think like when we talked about like racism too, it's like I think there's so much nuance and complexity to it. Like, how do we like pin this person as a racist? How do we say that this person where are the social consequences for like people participating in this? Do we consider their intentions a factor in like whether we care or not? I just feel like there's a lot of I don't know.
I feel like you just touched on the idea that like it's impossible to prove, right, like deductively that someone is a racist. Like when it comes to like online and spaces where people meme, right, it's literally impossible to effectively demonstrate one way or the other whether someone is actually a racist, and therefore it's really hard to draw those lines.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, this is one of the biggest things. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead.
But I think it's one of the biggest things when it comes to like conservatives. And I hate to bring this into another topic, but a lot of the arguments against, say, systemic racism in America is that, these people aren't actually racist. It's just the system. Just because just because there's a disparity between two populations doesn't mean there's a discrimination between two populations. And I think we have to recognize that, like, it's impossible to say, like, deductively prove that someone is discriminating against another person because of their race. I think that's something we should be more careful with. We should definitely use these words more carefully, so that the weight of them in modern society and the consequences of these words being applied on specific people are kept in place, instead of being shifted over to more mild, calmer definitions or more calm consequences than we would want those words to have.
And I think at the same time too, the right doesn't care anymore. I don't think they ever cared internally, but now openly it is within the mainstream discourse for the left to call somebody a racist, and that be kind of a joke. Like, a lot of mainstream conservatives, even Steven Crowder, big example. He's someone who'd be like, yeah, like, I get called a racist all the time. Like, he wears that on his sleeve as some badge. Where on the left, I like to think that people take that more seriously, right? That's something that you examine. On the right, they don't care. They don't argue in good faith. Their goals are not the same. They don't care about being called racist. It's just not important to them because the issues aren't important to them. And I think we have to engage them with that in mind, as opposed to engaging them the way that we engage leftists, where if I can deductively, as best as I can, show that someone is being racist and they're a fellow leftist, well, that's big. That means something. On the right, they'll just say, like, screw you, or like, no, I'm not, or you always call me racist. It doesn't matter to them.
Right.
And
I get called racist every day.
Yeah, we engage them on leftist grounds, and we'll lose every time.
Yeah,
because they don't care.
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of leftists also have to delineate between, like, engaging with, like, conservatism, reactionary, thoughts, ideas, and, like, arguments, and then shifting over to the left and trying to address that on our side. I think there's definitely a certain charitability. Like, a lot of people don't appeal to leftists. I think people, like, kind of disregard, like, how, like, conscious we are of, like how conscious we try to be of ourselves, whether we are or not. I think we can't, like, approach, like, leftists the same way we approach, like, reactionaries. I just don't think it's effective enough. I don't even think it's warranted. I think like if somebody were to approach me about something that I said was, like, racist or, like, offensive in any way, or, like, maybe indicative of some, like, internalized shit on my end, I mean, I would totally, like, be very, very, like, I take that very seriously and be introspective about it. I think that's definitely something that's important to me, and, like, being, like, I guess, like, keeping that under check, making sure I have, like, a good idea of, like, or I have, like, a good headspace for most of the stuff, and I can, like, even if I jokingly say something edgy, like, I do it with, like, a lot of things, like I presuppose, like, okay, everyone here is okay or wouldn't get offended, or, like, doesn't have any connection to this or wouldn't get offended. I mean, I don't even slur anymore. I've taken so many steps to, like, become, like, less edgy in, like, the last, like, couple months ever since I became a leftist. It's insane, but yeah, I mean, I generally do think, like, people should be a lot more charitable to people on the left with regards to this topic.
Yeah, totally agree with that statement.
I think that if you want the charitability, you'll usually ask for it, right? Like, if somebody on the left is, like, accused of being a racist, right, it's typically not, like, in my experience at least, it's typically not our reaction to just brush it off. Usually we'll remain in that space for however long it takes to kind of, like, get everybody on our side, right? And then be like, oh, well, like, that may have come off this way and I understand that and I apologize for it. However, XYZ is where my position comes from, right?
Yeah. And I think another thing too with leftists, and another big flaw, is that I feel like most people act like that. I like that most people want to be dialectical, that most people want to learn, that most people want to better themselves in those ways. And then there are some leftists who genuinely, the extent of their praxis is just to call people racist. And what have you really done there? But there are people like that where, you know, they call everyone everything. And it's like, okay, at this point, I'm not even going to open my mouth because I know that you're going to take it one way or the other. And that's, you know, there's a lot
very
of
regressive,
eggshells with them. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, the woke scolding is definitely one of the biggest problems we have in terms of just...
They're always looking for new problems, new people, and new things to call out.
I'm a woke scold, okay? I personally take that too.
Shut up, Papa.
Right, yeah, there's a difference between, like, woke scolding somebody and, like, informing them that what they're doing might be perceived as toxic, right? Like, you can do one without doing the other. Like, if you're someone, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it depends, like, if that person... it really does depend, right? So like if they're like bad faith or they really don't give a shit, like you can try your best to inform them, like, hey, this is why this is bad, this is what you're saying you believe in is bad, and then I'll just be like, fuck you, like don't try whatever the fuck they say, right? And it can be like really disheartening, and like I wasted all my energy like trying to help educate this person and just went fucking nowhere. And I probably further radicalized him because he thinks I'm a woke school now. Like I think it's definitely a situational thing, but I definitely do think it's like something we have to go more aware of. Which I think actually ties into the next topic, since I think most of us are leftists or would consider themselves leftists in some way, shape, or form. So I was actually going to talk about, let's see, leftism and left unity. So generally speaking, on the left, when compared to the right, we are very disunified. This is, I attribute it because we have like a lot of like different ideas. I think we're more intellectually honest with ourselves. I think we have like different approaches to different kind of ideas. And I think we want to take leftism different ways in this country. I think broadly for the right wing of this party, I think it's very easy for them to conform to one narrative. I think it's very easy for them to centralize and kind of like have a kind of at least baseline message of what they want their ideas to get across. And I think that makes them, unfortunately, a lot more effective than leftists, at least in that respect. I definitely do think we have the ideas on our side, and I definitely do think we have the potential to get there. However, a lot of infighting has like stopped a lot of coalition building, especially among like online leftists at least. So I was wondering if you guys have thoughts on that.
I feel like there is not as much right unity as people put across. I just think that the right is in power. I mean, the right spends all day bickering amongst themselves. There's obviously maybe more so they're more ready to work together than leftism, and I think that is because of ideology. But the right spends all day bickering with itself over BS, and I think that's just because they are in power. Whereas the left, there's a lot of when we bicker, it's very splintering because there is no organized power structure. There is no dominant leftist party with leftist values. There's none of that. So when we splinter, we just splinter. There's nothing to go back to. There's nothing to hold us together. Whereas on the right, you have people in the Republican Party who are liberals, and you have people in the Republican Party who are admitted fascists. Like there are people like who vote Republican who say I'm a fascist, and they support the Republican Party, and they disagree on just about everything, but they have the power structure. So I think we see that or perceive that as unity, even maybe when it's not.
I mean, even on like TikTok and other like online forums, right? The lib right to like auth right pipeline is a huge problem. So it's very easy for these two groups to get along and go from like one to another, which is something you really don't see on like leftist spaces. At least there's some semblance of like common interest you would think between the left, but it's actually the like auth right and auth right and lib right that seem to get along the best.
Yeah. The thing is, I was just gonna say something real quick. The thing with the lib right is, I don't think people who like identify with the lib right are like, or like I think like a lot of like conservatives are like generally people at least in America would say they identify with the lib right. However, I think most people are actually auth right. They just don't realize it, and they usually don't know what libertarian means.
Yeah, you've got the different tiers of lib right. You've got like the people that generally are like, they call themselves quote unquote centrists, but they lean libertarian or whatever. Like these people, they just grill outside and they just pretend to be libertarians. And then you got the Ben Shapiro shills who watch Ben Shapiro and think they're libertarians. And then you've got like the hardcore Austrians who quote unquote read theory and decide that they're libertarians, classical liberals, minarchists, anarcho-capitalists, even though that's completely ridiculous as an ideology. But I just think
it goes to show that.
Go ahead, Kosher.
No, I was just saying, I think it goes to show that the whole lib right, auth, like it doesn't mean anything. What matters is what you do. So, the whole political compass is stupid. Like because I don't know. I saw Nick Fuentes take the political compass test. He's like a centrist according to the test. It's a stupid.
Well, he got off left on it. So
yeah, but it was like nowhere. I mean,
it was slightly off left. Yeah.
It was designed by liberals to divide us up. All right, we all know this.
And it means nothing. Lib right, auth right, like whatever. It's your actions individually, and maybe that's some level of a classification. It's not totally meaningless, but it doesn't really do much for me.
So I think here's what to a broader degree, one of the bigger issues is that like the left is less unified because like right wingers in general, when they hear an idea that they like, they just kind of conform to it and they won't really like ask questions about like, oh, maybe this detail seems to like disagree with the thing I know about reality, they'll kind of just like accept it and go from there, right? While the left is more liable to have each member with our own individual praxis, and most of our disagreements are actually like resolved when we talk about them. Like we might be heated in the beginning of a discussion, but usually by the end of it, like I tend to find when I talk to other lefties, we're like, oh, well, like here's the fundamental disagreement that we have, and like I guess we just disagree on that, right? But that also plays into the same reason why like the lib left and the lib right online tend to like seem very unified, because like when the people on the lib left meet the people on the lib right online, we try to appeal to the things that we agree on, right? So we'll be like, oh yeah, like I'm actually also a libertarian, I agree with you on the X, Y, and Z, right? And then when the people who are on the right hear that, they just kind of take it uncritically and they're like, oh, okay, cool, so we like agree on most things. So there appears to be a lot more like, I think that there appears to be a lot more agreement there than there is, because us on the left trying to convince them are always trying to find agreement, and them on the right are just like incapable of realizing when there's not agreement, right?
Well, I don't know if it's just that.
Oh.
No, I think you cut out there, buddy.
Oh no.
Yeah, he just froze up.
Let Discord boot up.
He just BTFO'd you and left.
Right. But yeah,
you're back? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Uncle, I think you're back.
Oh yeah, you cut out for a
Could
second.
you restate your point? Sorry. You kind of blanked out there a little bit.
All right,
He might be having some connection issues.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll get back to it.
Okay.
But yeah,
yeah,
I don't know exactly what he was going to say, but yeah, obviously it doesn't completely boil down to this. One of the bigger issues, right, is that there is just a lot more disagreement on the left, and it's also because a lot of the people on the left, I feel like people on the left tend to identify a lot more with the terms that we use to describe ourselves, and the people on the right don't as much. The people on the right kind of are like, yeah, I fall into this, and this camp, and then people on the left are like, oh, I'm actually like a classical Marxist, Leninist, reformist, paleo, whatever, you know, and then like if anyone identifies as something
Chinese
else,
characteristics.
oh, so this is where you
I am a capitalist with Chinese characteristics.
I had some
You
fun.
cannot tell me anything.
I had some bombing food with Chinese characteristics just now. I think that a lot of it has to be that the right is the dominant ideology. It is in power, right? However you want to call it. I hate saying auth-right, whatever. It is what's in power. And so if you disagree with that a little bit, but you accept the power structure regardless, that's perceived as unity. It might be total disunity, but it's unity in that you support the power structure. The Democrats and the Republicans bicker about nothing, but everyone goes to vote, right? And that is still supporting the same power structure. It's still unity. I mean, that's what Zizek said. I don't think it's him originally, but he said that voting is an admission that, okay, we all agree on most things. We disagree on a few things. And that's what we're going to vote for. That is unity. Whereas on the left, since it's not dominant, there's all different ways of instituting a new power structure. There's a gazillion different ways. But the right, it's already there. They already have the power structure. They edit, they tinker, they accept it. The left is so much more invested in doing something new, and that can be awfully complicated and splintering.
I'd say just like the general like level of ideological disagreement on each side is drastically different. Because like, what does the right have? You have free market capitalists, and that's about it. Like, well, you have like cultural divide
They
issues.
have a model
like,
to look towards, like a primary model. Yeah.
like on the left, we have the various levels of like social democracy, various different types of socialism, the like methodology to reach the different types of socialism and stuff like that. We have much more diverse realm of things we can like pick up and believe in, whereas the right just has no state bad, markets good.
Now, I have a question about social democracy. This might change the topic, but so obviously on the left in America, social democrats are on the left, of course. Mm-hmm. But when I say the left, the true left, the left that I would work with, right? If a narco-communist had a power structure, I would support that, even though I vehemently disagree with it. I'm going to support that. I do believe in ideological unity. We're both working towards communism, socialism. I don't really understand how social democrats can be perceived as part of the left, or democratic socialists for that matter, when their goals are just different. They're part of the left in America, for sure, but their goals are different. If I am talking to a narco-communist, a narco-syndicalist, whatever, our goals are the same, or they should be, but they're not really the same, especially with social democracy, right? It's just non-racist fascism. Whereas democratic socialists, maybe they're advocating for socialism. I don't love it, but I don't see how. Do we consider social democracy part of the left in a general sense?
As a sock dem,
I think it should be.
I would say
Yeah.
generally, and here's where I'll change your mind, at least for some sock dems, right? If they're like me, right? I'm a sock dem who sees social democracy as like a transitional state. So like, I think that like the best way to do, I don't think that like revolution per se is an effective way to do like reform. I think that we should do reform on a more like ideological level, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to convert from the system we have now to the closest system that's close enough, which is social democracy, in which like under which agreement will hopefully develop to the primary basis of like education that everybody receives, to where we can like establish some form of anarcho-communism. Yeah.
I mean, the idea that the idea that social democracy is somehow gonna get us to socialism is ridiculous, because
I think that
in the
all
Nordic
that's required
countries,
to achieve socialism is like education.
their very robust safety nets are getting rolled back right now, because neoliberalism is still going to fight against those, even the most basic of reforms and like welfare programs.
The class structure remains in power. The class structure remains in power under social democracy, and they will roll back, and they have every reform that you have. This is why, in my opinion, you need a dictatorship of the proletariat to crush the ruling class. So there is nothing to roll back. There is nothing going backwards. Lenin says that when we keep these power structures that already exist, we are just using the old power structures, they will revert back to the way they are. It doesn't eliminate class division.
Yeah,
I mean, even in the U.S., when we had the New
that's
Deal,
an absurd concept. I think that we very easily see across all society forever that when we increase education, we are able to achieve more progress, and that this doesn't really have anything to do with like destroying the opposition.
the opposition is going to fight back against your reforms. That's the point.
They will, but the whole point is
this
that
is
like
what's happening in Western Europe right now. That's what happened to the New Deal.
If we're gonna
They
get
all
into
got
a
rolled
debate
back.
about, if we're gonna
right.
get
So
in-
the point is that like we want to establish a different baseline. Like the current baseline under the capitalist economy that we have right now is like very detrimental to society. But like if we were working from a baseline of social democracy, this would at least be like socially in line with like the ideals that we want to achieve at the end of the day, right? Which would make it a lot like if we can all agree that it's generally better for society when we make it better for everybody around us, and that usually benefits us, I don't see anything that would be
Now, you said everybody, but
Here.
one thing that you're negating about social democracy is the worsening of conditions for people in the global south, because obviously corporations and capitalists have to export their production to the third world.
Right, but obviously
Because,
that wouldn't happen as a global transitionary state because it would be global social.
Well, if the U.S. were to become a social
That's not
democracy, we would have to do that too. It's not like Bangladesh or India or any of these
Right,
global
it's not
south
happening
nations
either.
is
It's
going to be a
global
social democracy.
decentralized reform, like sure.
Here,
Or the only thing
if
is
we're
that's
gonna
what
get,
that's
if we're
supposed to
gonna get
happen
into a
anyway.
discussion about social democracy, I can hype up my. I don't know if 𝗷𝗀𝗀𝗃 wants to moderate, but I could probably moderate just because I don't want there to be like.
Oh no! Wait. If you guys want to, just, yeah, sure. I mean, like, I don't want to get like too caught up on things because, like, I guess I want to make sure we have like a good time to like go over everything.
Yeah, sure.
But,
I brought it up, but unrelated. I was curious.
I mean, I'll give my piece on it. Like, so you said we kind of talked about two things, like our sock dems, like leftists, and like essentially like, should we try to achieve social democracy as a transitionary? Right. Okay. So I mean, like, I think my first thing, I guess, optically, I totally understand. Like, I obviously like my definition for leftist would be like, I guess, anti-capitalist, or like true leftism as how I perceive it would be anti-capitalism and just pretty socially progressive. Like for me, socially progressive would mean at least like acknowledging the validity of trans people. Like that's basically
left wing ideology is defined by an abolition of hierarchy. So
abolition of hierarchy. Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think people that usually like are against capitalism. Actually, no, that's not true. A lot of fucking reactionaries also want to abolish capitalism. Yeah, but yeah, all in just hierarchies too. So
yeah,
I guess optically,
if you're more of an advocate for moving towards something of a egalitarian state of affairs, then you are considered a leftist, as the right-left bent on the political spectrum is is best kind of described as being a difference between on the right preferring things like hierarchy and on the left preferring things like egalitarianism and equality.
I guess that's just why I don't like that distinction. Like not like the left and the right, because it's always left of what, right of what. Really depends on where you are. You know, it's not that hard to be on the left in America. Most so many people are that are rightists, and adversely, it would not be that hard to be on the right in a socialist society, I'm sure, but to me that's not really a meaningful distinction because it's so relative. Sure, onto the left.
I mean, yeah, of course it's
Or the
relative.
spectrum shift as the Overton window, and just global ideology shifts. That's usually how.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, like, so I would say, particularly when it comes to like what you were talking about, how relative everything is. I totally agree. I think when you're in a specific country or a specific state, what is right and what is left changes at the spin of a dime, changes at the drop of a dime, right? Like that is how like relative everything is. I mean, in a socialist state, what's right might be like Dangism, but like if you go to fucking if you go to like, I don't know, fucking Nazi Germany, that's gonna seem like fucking like utopian socialism to like everyone. So when you talk about like these right left characteristics, I do agree with you in that they're completely arbitrary. However, it seems to be that when we look at the overall broader social movements and political movements over time, those who identify with the right and identify with people who are right-wing tend to prefer kind of keeping in social hierarchies in place and keeping in these robust hierarchies, whether it be through class structures, sexual orientation structures, racial structures, sexual structures, all of these structures that are kept in place by their ideologies. And when you go further to the left, you get more egalitarianism, with the far, far, far left, even off the political spectrum, being closer to something like communalism, which obviously is the most.
Can I dunk on neoliberalism for a second? Yeah, because that was gonna be my second point. Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. By the way, really smart kid. Yeah, but my second point was gonna, because like I kind of get where everyone's coming in terms of like obviously neoliberal capitalism. Like I don't think like we should necessarily concede that much. I don't think we can necessarily meaningfully reform our way out of capitalism. For me, that would be my. I totally understand where that comes from. However, I do believe that we should participate in trying to reform as much as we can now, and also recognize that we need to take certain steps to like get to like where we want to be. If you believe in revolution, so a step for me would be, since I guess I believe in more decentralized forms of revolution, would be massive grassroots organization, trying to build our own kind of like a pipeline online. To leftism, whether that be like BreadTube or like TikTok or whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh, it crashed. Bruh, can you load?
Although
There
I
we
do
go.
think we
I'm
can
back. I'm
alleviate
back.
some of the conditions that is enabled by the system.
Am I the only one who doesn't agree with that?
Or, hold on,
Yeah,
can you
but-
guys see me?
So,
That
like,
capitalism can't be reformed away.
Right. So I guess since I'm like the only person who might believe in this, I'll just give like my quick little thing. So like, I think the only way to have a successful revolution is to have an ideological revolution that isn't forced, and the only way to allow this to happen on a broad scale is to allow capitalism to persist while there's an ideological push towards collectivization with an increase in workers' democracies and equity, which will eventually, hopefully, end in the abolition of private capital.
I mean,
I
emphasis on eventually and hopefully.
I just think that like if you do it forcefully, like I don't think that forcing someone to do something gets rid of their tendency to want to do that thing. It has to be an ideological push.
Well, I guess. Well, okay. All right. So we'd have to go along class lines and distinction between the proletariat and the bourgeois. I think, especially throughout history, I think we'll see examples of the bourgeois not conceding power to the proletariat if there's going to be a revolution. I think, generally speaking, whether even if people would disagree with me, whether it be decentralized or centralized, I don't think like people in power necessarily want to like concede power peacefully. That's not something that usually happens. And even if we want to go the social democracy route, I mean, if we look at the UK right now, a lot of like reforms to the NHS in terms of making it more privatized throughout the years have been I So I obviously advocate for, like, that's why I advocate for voting for Joe Biden. That's why I advocate for harm reduction. That's why I advocate for voting down ballot. That's why I advocate for all these things, participation, bourgeois electoralism. But I don't think that's necessarily. Maybe we can have a peaceful revolution. I don't know. I think we should just, like, I think in the meantime, I think we can agree on is we should be active in our system, try to increase education, try to organize effectively, and just try our best, like, race class consciousness, and just advocate for our ideals as effectively as possible.
Right, and just to clarify, I 100% agree, right, that the current kleptocrats, right, will never want to be removed. But I think that, like, if we can have an ideological push to the point where, like, society has a majority opinion that capitalism is probably just makes you an asshole, right, that it would be a lot more feasible to, like, what we basically have to transition from the normalization of the current capital system that we have to the normalization of a social capital system, right? And, like, once we do that and people value social capital more than they do hard capital, then we'll be able to effectively translate, because then the people who are currently the kleptocrats will see it as advantageous to want to divest.
I think for me,
where, like,
partially,
society has a majority
revolution
opinion that capitalism is probably just makes you an asshole, right? That it would be a lot more feasible.
One of the things that I see is incredibly damaging, and something that we are not going to get away from, no matter how much capitalism we have, is just absolute disassociation from, like, everything. The ability to just disassociate our minds from the reality of things that is so necessary under capitalism. To simply exist under capitalism, you have to be able to what's the word? Basically delude yourself into not thinking about how many sweatshop laborers made the clothes that you wear, and the books that you're reading, and the sheets that you're sleeping in, and the desk that you're writing on, and the pen that you're making. You have to just totally disassociate from that in order to function. And that's a product of modern society, the thing that we are so distant from everything. All of our reality is represented in visual, as opposed to the real, as opposed to the now. For example, in ancient Greek, you could read about a text, about a myth, and it would say, that guy over there. And we know the guy that they're talking about. Society is connected in that way. We are living in a place right now where we live massively disconnected from one another. There's no familiarity with anything anymore. And I see that as a tremendous flaw of capitalism, and something that will persist, and something that is not talked about enough in mainstream discourse, at least for my liking.
Okay, cool. I actually like that. I think I have, like, another way of saying that, right? Is that, like, we need to remove the tendencies for humans to, like, disassociate societal harms and individual successes, right? Because in capitalism, it's actually currently the opposite, like incentivization, because we tend to associate individual successes with social gains under this capitalistic system.
It's trickle-down thinking. Whether we agree with it or not, we are conditioned to think of everything as trickle-down. We praise, like, people for getting rich. There's no idea, like, where money comes from. That for someone to be rich, somebody else has to be poor by definition. Yet people know that. If I said everyone can't be Jeff Bezos, if we gave everyone $80 billion, I think most people would be like, yeah, that makes sense. They get that. And yet this idea that, well, some people being rich, it's good they're rich. But they don't understand that by that same token, others have to be desperately poor, enslaved to that same system that somebody benefits from. That's the reality. And it's a terrifying one for me.
Yeah, that's definitely true, yeah, I mean, I guess my perspective on it all is, I'm a revolutionary leftist. I believe in a revolution, and I believe in advancing the needs of the proletariat, as well as trying to move ourselves forward to a society that is most exemplified in the values of leftism and the values of the left in terms of egalitarianism, social progressivism. That is my opinion on it all. In terms of what I believe reform has a place in leftism, I mean, in a sense, I think we should try as leftists to move our society forward as much as we can. As much as we can in electoralism, as much as we can move our society forward through the ballot box and support people running for elections. I feel like we have an obligation to do that, because if we don't, we're essentially just preferring to use our influence in one way but not another. And I don't think that's a very good way of doing things. However, I do understand that there is a disutility to using electoralism as kind of a final push, because obviously using the electoral bounds of a capitalist system and a bourgeois democracy is not in any way, shape, or form going to propel us to the kind of socialist society that we seek to achieve. It's not going to happen through electoral means. It's simply impossible. But, you know.
I mean, yeah, like electoralism can be useful to like making people's lives a little bit less shitty under capitalism. And obviously someone like Bernie Sanders can be extremely useful at moving people to the left and introducing new ideas to people. But I think the most important thing right now is to organize in your communities, raise class consciousness, and help put people through like non-electoral measures, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we need to do as leftists is just do more praxis. I mean, if you're a leftist and you don't know how to talk to a working class person, I hate to be harsh to you, but you're fucking useless. You know, you're not gonna get anyone just sitting on your couch, you know, arguing with people who are already entrenched in politics. That's one of my biggest problems with. Hate to characterize them with, but one of my biggest problems with the quote unquote online left is that they spend too much time arguing with people that are already politically entrenched on the issue, especially with other leftists. And I understand the utility to that, right? Like, I mean, like convincing a fascist who's already entrenched in fascism that his ideology is going to tear him away and is going to turn him into a husk of a person is a good thing to do, right? However, I think there's more utility to going out, doing activism, doing praxis, and talking to people who are actually affected by the majority of these issues instead of doing kind of work that is in some ways useful, but is in the majority of ways not useful at all.
Right. Before we go past
there's millions of people in this country getting crushed by capitalism, you know, they're just not really aware of that, and there's huge potential there.
Exactly.
Right. I get. Before we go past electoralism, I just wanted to, I guess, like clarify my position again, since I seem to be the only one to have it. So, like, I guess I think like electoralism more broadly, I don't think can lead directly. Like, it's very unlikely that the state would like the people under a state would vote to just like disintegrate it, right? But I think that generally what would happen, like in my idealistic model, would be that like the current electoral systems would break down into more localized but similar measures, which like could then hopefully naturally dissipate into anarchistic localism of some kind.
Okay, so actually, well, now that I'm back, really quick, I sort of agree with Reliable Lefty here, except my idea is to electorally utilize the state rather than, you know, revolt, replace the power with the vanguard. I'd much rather have it more accountable to existing democracy. Right. And then use that to foster class consciousness via moving away from capitalism via reform, so people see their lives getting better in spite of capitalism. And also, ideally, you know, if we dominate the system, if we, you know, take control of the state, we now have the ability to control the educational system in the state, which means we can also help instill class consciousness there. Like, my God, I never heard who Karl Marx was. I never even knew he existed till like my junior year in sociology. That's a fucking travesty.
That's true. Yeah.
So, I agree with like Kosher here, you know, the utility of the state in some point, except I would rather just use democracy and electoralism and advocacy to gradually move leftward instead of simply revolution, overthrow the state, replace it with the vanguard.
Yeah. I see the
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean,
yeah, I guess that all comes down to the thing that I was kind of touching at, which is like we need to get to a point where it will be realistic to change systems because we've transitioned from a system where we value capital to a system where we value social capital.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think me and Penny like don't like vanguardism. I think we pretty vehemently like argue for decentralism.
But
I do understand there's like critiques with it, but I think generally I think the material conditions have changed to such a dramatic extent in our ability to organize. It's just so much. We can do it so much more effectively nowadays. I mean, if you look at BLM, I mean, the ways in which they can organize is unprecedented. And I think that's something we should generally try to achieve. The grassroots organization, on the groundwork, all of that. I think it's culminating, right? I think what a lot of leftists like do. I don't like to impede people with this. I understand why people think this way, but like, I think it's kind of lazy to like just opt out and say, like, the only way we can achieve this is through vanguardism. We need a dictatorship. We need to have some sort of vanguard state or something. I think generally, what we should try to do as leftists is, even regardless of that, I think we should just try our best to advocate for what we believe in, educate people, just have conversations with people. I mean, that's how I converted 2 people to communism like the other day. I mean, like I genuinely do think like we as leftists need to do a lot more than we do right now in terms of like direct action and just like trying to change people's minds.
Yeah, I have that opinion as well, for sure.
So, like, since we're not going to be dogpiling kosher here, I have a critique of decentralism, and that's the idea that we have to use. Like, I'm a pragmatist in my core, right? So I'm thinking about how we go from now to socialism in the future.
Sure.
My idea of utilization of the state requires a sort of national identity, so that the rich people don't just flee.
Right.
Because what I think with like decentralism is the idea, like, if we go to more state level, there's going to be a decent amount of dissenting states. What we're going to see is a bunch of wealth flee these transitioning states to the like the more conservative states, and so we'll then have an optical problem, which isn't, look how capitalism is working well over here, even though it's just rich people playing with their fucking money. Of course it's going to do better. Look how bad the socialists are doing, because there's just like an absence of wealth there. So we have to use this like on a more federal level, because rich people going from state to state much more common than rich people going from country to country. So that's why, like, higher taxes wouldn't necessarily make all the rich people flee, but, they'd hop states if, that was the thing going there.
I think that the French devised the wonderful and scientific way to make sure rich people do what you want. And I think as someone who would also like to utilize the state, I think there is a fun and cool way to make sure that rich people don't flee my country.
See, I just, once again, I call myself a pragmatist. I think it would be a massive optical problem if we Marie Antoinette the bitches.
Once you have the dictatorship of the proletariat,
you can
optics are you can do it, but optics.
You control the optics.
I'm not really worried about
the revolution. Will be televised.
I hate to quote Caleb Moppin blocked me on Twitter because I was like, hey, why are you
blocked too? Let's go.
And he blocked me, and I was like, all right. So I hate to quote him, but he does have this one intelligent thing. He said that there's never going to be a form of socialism that the New York Times likes. Right? There's never going to be a form of socialism that is going to be optically okay. Like, if I institute a dictatorship of the proletariat, the other Western countries aren't going to be like, okay, but their optics are great. Like no. I mean, we're going to get the entire brunt force of the reactionary ruling class, whether we use the guillotine or not. And obviously, I'm being facetious. I don't think we should just guillotine the entire ruling class. Okay. But
wait,
but the Western attack is going to come. It's always going to come, regardless of how nice I am to the ruling class. It's not like England is going to right out Chappie.
I guess, are you arguing that, do you think it's just impossible to transition to a system which values social capital more under a capitalist system?
Without revolution, no. I don't think it's
say we have a system that's like currently we allow co-ops in the United States. Say we give them preferential loans to every type of democratic workplace, and then we end up with a situation where 60% of Americans in 30 years just live in co-ops, and that's where we work and make our money, and then we're oh, well, I mean, maybe since this is the case, capitalism doesn't seem to be too great, right?
How are we going to get to the point where when we say, okay, capitalism is no longer necessary? Because up to then, it's okay, that makes what you're saying makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I guess it would have to be step by step increasing the number of people who work under those conditions that we
don't have time for that. The Earth is going to start purging itself of poor people in
a reasonable argument.
The fact of the matter is, the globe is going to start purging itself of people by the millions, and it already is. And that's just the nature of our world right now. So if we had 1,000,000 years, I would be down to try all the democratic, non-violent ways in the world, because I don't want people to die. But we don't. We don't have time. This is it. Our planet is burning.
Reasonable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I understand that. I disagree, but
if I could kind of, I'm okay.
You want me to try?
Go ahead, Papa.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with this argument, but I think something we also have to take into consideration in terms of centralism or democratic socialism is that if we're going to have a revolution in our time, we only have one shot. If we lose to fascism, our movement would be set back centuries, and at that point, I don't think we would see a socialist revolution in the next fucking mind.
My only criticism is the success of the revolution. That's really what I'm trying to ensure personally.
Yeah, so that's my concern with socialism. I think generally, in terms of So like, I guess maybe if I define my definitions like how I would achieve like or like what I would do with decentralism, like maybe it'd help. So I think I definitely I don't conform to anarcho-syndicalism, but I do like the ideas of having like different like syndicates, workers' unions, or just different like representatives
Let's
of the
get up
proletariat
tomorrow
throughout
early
each part of
morning
the
and do
country
it. How about
come
that?
together to collectively represent the interests of the proletariat. Obviously, this could be distributed through districts or counties or like states or whatever, right? So they come together, they devise a manifesto of like the commonly like, or whether it be through elections or through representative society or kind of like writing this like kind of like manifesto of what we have and our ideals and what we want. And obviously, we would either use peaceful or non-peaceful means to achieve that, and we would use that apparatus we built up, which I wouldn't call it the state necessarily, since I would believe that violence be disseminated or decentralized enough along the lines of like the institutions we would have that I wouldn't classify it as like a state. But I think we can use that apparatus we built up to then collectively transition into the socialism, then obviously transition to communism. If you go by the Marxian definition of like what we use socialism for.
Harrison, what's your opinion on centralism versus decentralism, or centralization versus decentralization?
I'm still reading a bit more on like vanguardism and some like Rosa Luxemburg's critiques on it. Like, I can honestly see, acceptable like arguments for both of them. So I don't really have my mind made up yet, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you for not being a tanky.
Yeah, I'm generally an anarchist, right? So I don't take the vanguardist. I don't take the vanguardist position like. I don't take it just because I don't believe it's a feasible way of achieving socialism in today's world, and especially I don't believe it's a way that is going to in any way, shape, or form instill power in the working class, right? So I believe in fundamentally one thing, right? I believe that the proletariat should come to their class consciousness by themselves, right? And that's one of the fundamental doctrines of Marxian socialism, and that is that class struggle or class consciousness for the proletariat comes forth by the struggles against the contradictions of capitalism, right? So that is essentially what Marx believed to be the origins of that class consciousness that we are trying to achieve. So my solution to all this is essentially, instead of letting some people control what the proletariat want, what the proletariat's interests are, and how our society moves forward in terms of our socialist mode of production, I believe that the proletariat should be able to dictate that, because I believe that the true freedom, equality, and solidarity that we should try to find in socialism, and we should try to fulfill the failed promises of the Enlightenment under capitalism through socialism, that is how we should do that. We should do it through a period of letting the proletariat choose how they basically form their society. It's a controversial opinion, but...
I mean,
well said, comrade.
My support of vanguardism depends a lot on how democratic it is. Like, I think it is possible to have a vanguard with a lot of like participatory democracy, and I think that's something I could get behind.
My problem with...
me,
go ahead.
I'm not an Enlightenment guy, I see people who are like, we need to get back to fulfill the promises of the Enlightenment. Like what?
Well, democracy is pretty neat, and that's one of the good things.
Well, no, like the promises of the Enlightenment were supposed to be... So, in the Enlightenment thinkers were basically proposed some pretty good virtues. I mean, like equality, liberty, freedom, solidarity with others, brotherhood. These are all...
property rights.
Well,
hell yeah,
that came from John Locke. Well, so so John Locke basically was the one that came up with property rights. Well, he is considered an Enlightenment thinker, right? Adam Smith, right? He is considered an Enlightenment thinker. However, right, and this is very important, the fact Adam Smith, right? So the capitalist person who created capitalism, essentially, he actually wrote in The Wealth of Nations, right, that capitalism wasn't the right system. He said that capitalism is just something that's moving towards something. I don't know what this is. I don't know what capitalism is supposed to be culminating in, but there is something there. There is something at the end of the journey that must be achieved. And while there are certain things about the Enlightenment that I would rather forget, like, slavery, segregation, racism. These are things that I would forget about the Enlightenment. However, the core values of the Enlightenment, those that the fundamental Enlightenment philosophers thought of and proposed, are things that not only Marx exemplified, but they are things that we as socialists should move forward to, because we should try to fulfill the failed promises of liberalism in achieving these values, instead of resorting to the failed, defunct capitalist system that has lied to us that we are achieving these values. We should move towards a system of socialism that more accurately and fundamentally gives us these rights to exemplify our freedom, our liberty, and our solidarity as people. But that's my...
Well said, brother.
That's my spiel.
Hell yeah. All right. If unless anybody has any other thoughts,
if Kosher has a response to that, he can say something.
I would. It's my response isn't like that nuanced. I used to be a very big proponent of the Enlightenment, big reader. I came to the conclusion of my opinion that racism, property rights, these are central tenets of Enlightenment thought, regardless of what Adam Smith said. The praxis of the Enlightenment, racism in the Enlightenment is well documented, and it's within the nature, regardless of a lot of the things about the Enlightenment that are good. This whole idea of the Western canon, it is an extension of Western thought, the Enlightenment, and that isn't a good thing, because the West, we live in the imperial core. To dismantle the imperial core, you can't extend the values of the imperial core. You can't say that that Marxism is some continuation of this Western value. Even if it stems from it, it's still verifying that we live in the imperial core. What are Western values? We say liberty, we say freedom, we say democracy. I say Western values are the ability to walk outside with an expensive jacket on and be able to dissociate the fact that the factory full of children that produced this jacket just collapsed, killing 200 people, and you get to read about it in the New York Times and forget about it the next day. That's central to Western culture. It's central to Western values, and it's been central to capitalism. And that's not something I can forget.
I think something like democracy, which was sort of popularized by the Enlightenment, but it can certainly be separated from it, right? It existed before the Enlightenment. And the foundational thinkers like Marx, Lenin, Luxemburg, they were all fans of democracy.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so my big thing
I just think that the Enlightenment is more than just democracy.
Well,
I
understand, Kosher, right? Sorry, I've got this light on me. The sun's outside. It looks like I have a triangle of light, like a Dorito of light on my fucking shoulder. Anyways, essentially, my take on this, right? So I understand where you're coming from, right? So imperialism, sexism, bigotry, racism, slavery, all of these things are a central part of Western idealism and Western centralization of power. And this Eurocentric thought that we've been taught for hundreds of years that, Europeans are the best. They're the ones that, made everything. Oh, you think the Egyptians are black? They were fucking albino, dude. No, I understand, this whole narrative of Western civilization being better than other types of civilization. I totally do. However, I would like to go against your point a little bit, right? I think imperialism, disassociation, and all of the negative consequences that you've laid out are less a product of the Enlightenment thought and more a product of capitalism. Now, you can say that capitalism was a product of Enlightenment thought, and I wouldn't disagree with you. However, I would say that capitalism is not a proponent of Enlightenment values. So capitalism is a system devised by Enlightenment thinkers to promote the values that they supposed were the right values to uphold. They said that free association, markets, voluntarism, these were things that should be a part of capitalism, and these are things that will fulfill the values of freedom, equality, and solidarity. However, they don't solve for those values. Capitalism is inept at trying to give people freedom, equality, and solidarity. You can't have freedom in a system in which you are coerced to work to live. You can't be equal in a system in which some people have more money than others and they can contribute to society and contribute to the political process more than others. That is why bourgeois democracy is entirely flawed. And third, you can't have solidarity with others when you're in constant competition with them. I totally agree with this. However, in socialism, which is a system built on the foundations of egalitarianism, built on the idea that you should have the freedom to do what you want. You shouldn't be held by the bounds of your own labor. You shouldn't be coerced by some boss man at the top. The idea of equality. Instead of one man with billions of dollars being able to lobby their way into the fucking political system, you're allowed to give your own ideas. And solidarity. You can sit with your brothers and sisters at the table and truly agree on things without having to compete with them for a job next week, a fucking job application. I don't know. These are the values that the Enlightenment put forward, that socialism and left-wing thought under the view of Marxism and anarchism, whatever flavor of socialism you desire to take. These are the values that are fulfilled by socialism and its various flavors, in my opinion. That's my spiel on everything. I'm an Enlightenment simp. That's my.
Fair enough. I don't have much love for the Western canon.
No, I don't either. I fuck the West, dude. Holy shit.
I think that there's a lot of liberty, freedom, justice, equality, all that stuff. I would define it a lot differently than Western thinkers.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure.
Guys, if I can butt in for a second, is that alright? So would you guys like to end at like 6:30 or 6:45? Is that good?
Yeah, I'm down whenever.
Yeah,
I don't want to monopolize the rest of the conversation though. So.
Oh yeah.
I just want to make sure we get to the rest of our topics, and then we'll have a Q&A bit at the end, like a 15-minute or something like that. Just want to make sure we have time for everyone.
Sounds good.
Get their thoughts.
Real quick.
Yeah, you guys can talk.
It's in my name. Leftism is liberty. The idea is that the left is the true way to, the left seems like the liberation of proletariat and such. And so my idea is like the only way for you to truly be free in society is to be free of all coercive forces that act upon you, at least the most amount. And my idea is that socialism gets us there. How the Enlightenment as it's written is okay, that liberty, justice, just a general idea of freedom is a good idea. Of course not in like the capitalist framework, but under socialism it seems to fit those ideals pretty well.
Yeah.
Well,
as they were written, of course.
Harrison, do you have any
if you believe in like historical like materialism or dialectics, I think you'd recognize that I think like we've been building up to the point where we are now, and I think the Enlightenment may have been like a step in that direction. However, I don't think we should necessarily I think it was a good step in that direction. I mean, even though it did establish capitalism, I think the way at least we should look at historical dialectics is just looking at how we progress society. Obviously, we have feudalism, then mercantile capitalism, then capitalism, and then what we hope we pronounce is socialism, and then communism, right? So I definitely think I think we can look at yeah, I kind of agree with Kosher on this. I think I definitely I don't like the Western perception of it. However, I would argue that I think it was an inevitability rather than just something we should discount. I don't know.
Okay.
That's kind of
Harrison, do you have any inputs on this particular conversation?
Again, some of these ideas hold value. I'm a big fan of human liberation and egalitarianism and democracy, and obviously the Enlightenment did almost nothing to fulfill these. I would say yes, socialism is a step getting there. So.
Okay. All right. I guess if we exhaust that topic, I have one more topic. Then we can end the Q&A session. Our next topic will be about the 𝗙𝗃videos join the Neo-Austrians, or the Neo-Austrians in general.
Some drama for the end here. All right, interesting.
Yeah, a little bit. We'll just keep it interesting, so they won't clip this. I have to deal with it tomorrow. But if you guys don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But
we know why they did it. They did it for attention. If someone invited me to go to the Hype House, I would do it in a heartbeat. And if maybe that means shedding my value, sure, but I'd be preaching Marxism to about 1 million people. 100% I'd do it. You do what gets you a bigger platform. The Neo-Austrians put 𝗙𝗃videos in the house, and it's going to give them a bigger platform. And let's be honest, they're not that distant from stupid shit. So I feel like a lot of the stuff he says they might actually agree with. It's not like they don't see 𝗙𝗃videos the same way we do. His thought process is similar to theirs in terms of its stuntedness. Just the absolute arguments in bad faith, the refusal to engage on any topic whatsoever, constant deflection, pointing to logical fallacies instead of engaging people in reasonable conversations. It's all there on the right. So there's a lot of stuff that we might find distasteful that they don't really care about.
Bro, you committed the bread fallacy. Shut up. That's pretty much all the fucking
bread
say.
fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Nick Videos is just such a blatant grifter, right?
Oh my god.
What was it, like 2 months ago, saying,
yes.
"Oh, I'm not supporting Trump," right? All this stuff. Now he's back supporting Trump, and now like some Austrian economics guru, and now he's telling people to read theory. Like this man has ever read a page of theory in his entire life.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I bet. You know what I bet he's gonna. Yeah. You know what I bet he's gonna do? Tomorrow or something. Like, okay, after Trump loses, which every current metric points to the fact that he's probably gonna.
He's not losing. He's not
No way.
losing.
You don't think he's gonna lose?
If it was a popular vote, Trump would absolutely lose, but that's not how elections work anymore.
Wait. Even okay,
even in the electoral college, though, right?
Yeah, I agree with
you. Even through the electoral college, I think like I don't at least with the polling data and aggregate data that we see on.
If it was a fair election, then yeah, sure, Biden would maybe have a better chance. But this is not a fair election. It's going to be the most fraudulent election in American history. There's going to be unprecedented levels of voter suppression.
Unprecedented voter suppression? Sure, yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, he's probably.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be enough though. I'll be honest, like maybe I don't know. I don't think that they could like reasonably.
Either way, make sure you're armed. That's all I'll say about that topic. Arm your family, arm your loved ones, because the fascists don't respect you.
Got
no. I've seen many people, like, honestly, with his inflammatory rhetoric around quote unquote joking about a third term, like, holy shit, like, this is actually like
right.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want to get into how
totally
fucking
agree.
Oh, even if he were to lose the election, he wouldn't leave.
Yeah, I know.
He's literally banning a social media app, and people are living in cognitive dissonance about what, like, he banned a platform. We mock China relentlessly. Oh, they don't have Instagram, they don't have this. Yeah, and that's not good. Like, I'm not here defending China, I'm not critical support, but the fact of the matter is people are so disconnected from reality that I think 𝗷𝗘𝗔𝗃𝗓𝗓 is his name. He was the head of the NSA, and now he's on the board of directors at Amazon, right? The head of the NSA is on the board of directors at Amazon. Who talks about that? That's scary. We are living in a system where a group of people is in control. I think his name is 𝗷𝗘𝗔𝗃𝗓𝗓. Don't quote me on that. But head of the NSA is definitely on the board of directors at Amazon. Former head of the NSA. Like, we're living in it, whatever it is. We're living in a situation where the president is going to influence the election, like, openly, freely. He doesn't care. And that's just the fact.
I mean, we already see that with, like, the voter ballots.
All the whole rhetoric around. We did into that under Trump last election say that he didn't.
Oh, wait, what'd you say? Why? I think I talked
like, all of the metrics that we have from the last election show that there was, like, no issue with the, like there was more general voter suppression, sure, but there was no, like, specifically targeted, like, there was nothing happening. There was no, like, fake votes. There was no, like, inaccurate mail-in ballots or anything.
Oh, no. He's specifically regarding
they
the voter fraud
need
that Trump
to.
says.
I mean, even the 2018 election, I live in Georgia, right? That was unquestionably a fraudulent election that Brian Kemp won over Stacey Abrams. It's going to be something similar in 2020.
Why do you think that, I guess?
Mass closing of polling locations, purging of people who were registered to vote, moving of polling locations. There was a lot of dirty stuff they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Engaging in voter suppression, I definitely do think that he will engage in voter suppression. I just don't think it can. I just don't think the extent he would need to. While still maintaining, like, some covertness would be enough for.
I don't think he's smart enough.
I don't.
Huey Long back, because that's someone that would fix all this BS. That's what we need.
Wait, who?
Huey Long,
the most based politician in U.S. history.
Huey Long.
Huey Long is awesome.
I know.
He's like the most Chad person ever.
Huey Long is like, you can't just use the government to redistribute wealth as you see fit, and he was like, fuck you, you absolute god.
I know, right? Oh my god, fucking based. Anyways, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, back to the Nick Videos thing. I swear to God, just like Zach the Debunker did, he's calling himself a Hoppian now. I doubt he knows what that fucking means.
Wait, he called himself a Hoppian?
What
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah.
Literally,
I mean,
the dude that says
all of libertarian TikTok is calling themselves Hoppians.
Hoppians.
It's
Have they,
ridiculous.
Wait, yo, what the fuck is with that? That's so weird.
Have they read Hop? Like he's
Dude,
in have
oh
they
my God,
read or
dude,
listened?
Hop
to him?
literally
Dude, you wanna know why?
Hop
They're
said
all-
there can be no tolerance towards Democrats and communists in a libertarian social
He
order.
also advocates for monarchy. He says that monarchy
know.
was an objectively better system, and his logic is that because the monarchs owned the country, they cared about it more. In the same way that when you own clothes, you care about it more than when you're renting them. And the reason we're in so much debt today now is not global capitalism, is not extortion, is not trade, is not imperialism, but the fact that people don't value their country as much because they don't own it, so they have no problem putting it in his debt.
Wait,
That's not
you know what we should do?
Isn't it usually the opposite too? It's usually like, hey, once I own a thing, I can pretty much do whatever I want with it and destroy it. But like, if I'm renting a suit, I got to pay attention to it and keep it nice.
Yeah.
Same logic as saying slavery is better than having an employee because you can own the slave and you care about it more.
Right.
That's true, yeah.
It's the point.
Wait, Hoppians.
He misses the point.
I'm gonna try and reach out to the Hoppians right now. Okay, so listen to me. What if we all collectively owned the means in which we worked, and we were all invested in the? If we were all invested.
Yeah, bro, that makes more sense.
In order,
Then you'd be
and
more.
we all participated in mutual,
But my term
like, we all had
preference.
so
Yeah.
we were all, like,
Oh my God, dude! This is the same people that say that homosexuals have higher time preference. Like, what the fuck is that supposed to
Oh
mean?
yeah, dude. What the
Holy
fuck?
shit.
That's so weird.
It's
Like, what the?
What are you talking about? It's like, yeah.
Like
black-
a Russian capitalist has started calling himself a Hoppian.
Oh my God, Russian
Oh,
capital.
you know, wait,
Whenever
Russian
his name was-
capitalist, the socialism is when no roofs guy.
My
I saw that
favorite.
in the debate with him and Alex. Debates were debating someone. He was like, you know, like back in the USSR, they didn't even have roofs because they had problems with distribution. And then like I was looking it up, and it literally not a thing. No one has ever talked about that before him.
People like talk to people under socialism. Near my house is a place all these old Russians sit outside. So this summer I went and just talked to them. And like they're old people, so like obviously they're delusional. So I don't actually take their opinion seriously because if they'd praise any system. You talk to like any Italian person over 70, they'll just be like Mussolini, like that was the time, and it's like
yeah.
so you take it with a grain of
True
salt.
that.
But like you ask them about stuff, and they're like, yeah, we had food and toilet paper. Like who told you we didn't? Like there's this idea that people are just like walking around with like shit all over their hands, like starving to death, like all across. And you're like, how does society last? How does the society last for 70 years like that? They say, where is the technological apparatus to monitor what everyone is saying? They didn't have the technology to be as authoritarian as people say. It's like when Soviet Union ended, like this is the point Parenti makes. Where are all the people streaming from the gulags? Like where are the millions of gulag survivors? Do you know any gulag survivors? Do you know any? I mean, there's supposed to be millions of people in the gulags, right? I live in a city with like 200,000 Russian immigrants. I talk to a lot of people who know Russian immigrants. I've never met a gulag survivor in my entire life. Never. Now, I know
Must
people
have been really good at it, man.
related to like Nazis. Yeah, I mean, you're way likelier to meet a Holocaust survivor than a gulag survivor. And I'm not saying like gulag. I'm not saying gulags don't exist. I'm not saying they weren't severe. I'm not saying they were a good thing. Okay, so I'm not defending them. They obviously existed. Obviously they were severe. Obviously millions of people were in there.
Dude,
Obviously
what a
people were
meme.
worked to death. But there's this idea that any prison outside of the U.S. is a prison camp. Like, what are prisons in the U.S.? What is the difference between a prison in the U.S. and a prison camp? Like, where is the disconnect?
We have
By
pretty
what
well.
metric are
yeah.
prisons good?
There's
bigger
perfectly
stake.
good critiques of like the gulags, but all of them come from the left. And if you're making those critiques from the right, you're just a massive hypocrite. You're doing special
Yeah.
pleading.
Critiques of the gulags that I hear from the right are just like, okay, yes, and that's bad, but like you're getting mad about mass incarceration of ethnic minorities, bad working conditions in prison, and prison labor. Like, are those your three biggest critiques of the gulag? Like, I have news for you. Like, this is
Like,
not a flaw of
welcome to
You
socialism.
can argue the United States has a more brutal prison
Yeah,
system
I
in
mean,
the
yeah.
21st century.
Yeah,
exactly.
And this thing would be like, they'll be like, oh, Stalin was anti-gay rights, like as opposed to all the other 1950s leaders who were pro. Again, he should have been pro these things, but we apply this 2020 standard to these countries, and we don't even apply the 2020 standard of America, right? We apply the 2020 standard of like some progressive utopia where there's no ethnic mass incarceration, et cetera, et cetera. It's patently ridiculous. It's so
I'm
weird.
glad you weren't just denying it. I was so worried for a
No,
second.
I'm not. Everyone calls
Thank
me
you for your clarification.
everyone calls me like a tanky, and I get that because compared to a lot of leftists, I am. But it's like I'm not out here defending Stalin. Like you're not gonna catch me. I'll defend Stalin when somebody's like horrible people like Stalin.
I disagree that it wasn't a defense of Stalin. It obviously was, but it was a fair one.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it was a defense of Stalin, but it's me defending Stalin when someone's like, bad people like Stalin and Hitler, and they'll be like, Winston Churchill was a hero, and it's like,
oh, Winston Churchill,
what?
My favorite.
Like, what? Like, I don't understand. They criticize, like,
Kosher,
Winston
I
Churchill
literally
just as many as Stalin and Hitler. I mean, that's not even debatable, but if you use the same metrics, and it's stupid to use those metrics, because, like, who cares? But
and then they'll start like,
yeah,
as
he's
a
like, there's a
third,
genocide happening,
they'll be like,
but it's not.
as a third generation Ukrainian, I have personal experience with gulags, and I can tell you, they're horrible. And it's like, what the fuck?
The Soviet Union. Like, I get these things are bad. I'm not saying they're not bad, but there's this idea that they're like unique, where it's like, I don't understand how you would say that people are treated differently as ethnic minorities in Mississippi than they are in the USSR, and like that's your critique of like, wait, try being black in Mississippi at the same time as in the USSR. Like, these things happen, and they're not good. But the issue is that when you have a state that's that goddamn big, they purge, they imperialize, they take over, and they subjugate all throughout human history. An apparatus that's that big and that centralized is poised to do that every single time. Roman Empire, Mongol Empire, British Empire, America, Russia, I mean, China right now. Massive centralized power apparatuses, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in a centralized global revolution, then, I would assume.
I don't think the global revolution can be like centralized at this point. I'd love for that to happen. I look at the reality is what I see is a revolution needs to occur in the imperial core. Because once that happens, you are unshackling a lot of countries in the global south that may not be socialist right now from that imperialism. And they won't become socialist right away, or maybe not at all. But Jesus, would that be a big help? I mean, the amount of socialist revolutions that have been stomped out by imperialism, I mean, we can go right now, right? We all know. So the imperial core needs
not
to fall.
enough.
The imperial core needs to fall. And when that, maybe that'll happen. Marx was banking on it happening in Germany, and so was Lenin. Lenin was very prepared. That's what a lot of people don't understand. He was like, when it happens in Germany, it'll set off a wave, and then we can socialize Russia. And it didn't. Obviously, a different kind of revolution happened that they maybe weren't as expecting.
Slightly different.
Slightly
Yeah.
different.
It's just somewhat
But it's funny because a lot of those values of populism and stuff show that Germany was ready for revolution. It just
It wasn't a.
I mean, yeah, Rosa Luxemburg
wasn't the
had
one we
their
wanted.
revolution was killed for that.
yeah. So
Yeah. I hate to go back to the topic, but I actually wanted to like connect. I feel like like when we were talking about the neo-Austrian, I was looking at some of like their videos recently because I know P is going to do like a deep dive into neo-Austrian
It's the
economics.
𝗁𝗏𝗏 house right
Yeah,
there.
no,
Oh
I
my
have
God,
a whole.
Cudley.
I'm
Jesus
right
Christ.
now. I'm writing like a dialogue critique of not only praxeology but like libertarianism just as an ideology.
I mean, they literally
It's
will say,
dope.
like they made a post that it was like, yes, we as neo-Austrians don't use empiricism.
Oh
and then
yeah,
in the comments,
they take full pride.
we
They take
define
full
empiricism
pride.
differently. It's like you don't get to define empiricism differently. What an ironic bastardization
Oh, no,
of
no,
that
no.
word.
Cuddy,
If you
Yeah,
find
I've
any
seen
neo-Austrian,
them make it-
dude, if you find any,
I've seen them make a
neo-Aust-
distinction, right?
Yeah, if you find
like
any,
Where they'll
neo-
be like, they were like, oh, we inject empiricism, not empirical data. Like, what does that even mean?
It's like empiricism is
Such a
empiricism.
useless distinction.
Empiricism. There's
Yeah.
no middle ground. You either it's empiricism or it isn't. But
yeah.
Well,
And
the
yet,
thing
no.
is, like, one of them like literally just rejects like fundamentally consequentialism, which I find really fucking.
Oh
interesting.
yeah, Cudley.
because their idea
Cudley's
is
a
so
dumbass, dude.
ridiculous.
Holy
Alex
shit,
does
I don't even
that,
care. dude.
right? Doesn't
Even-
Alex say that he rejects all forms of consequentialism, not realizing that? Nice.
Yeah.
I saw like some Cudley video popped up on my For You page yesterday. And it was like, when I'm talking about human nature, I'm talking about who we are, not how we act. I'm like, what? How can you make that differentiation?
I'm talking about insert random philosophy word here.
Oh my
like,
god,
you'll literally
dude!
agree
And
with a big
he's like,
philosophy word that you
Yeah, no,
agree
no,
with,
he's
and then
like-
they disagree.
You just gotta say a bigger word.
capitalism
back, like
is a
transubstantiation.
separation of the state and the economy. Oh, well, anarcho-communism is capitalism then. Haha. It's like, shut the fuck up. Holy
Correct.
shit.
They literally. I was in a
Yeah.
debate. One of them said, "No, Adam Smith isn't a capitalist," and it's like, explain to me, like why you deserve to live. Like 3 seconds. You just, and I've debated Marxists like this too, who are just like mostly Maoists, who are just so up their ass. Where I'll just be like, well, no, like here's what Marx said, and they're like, don't tell me what Marx said, and it's like, okay, Like, you're just fucking out of your mind at this point.
Yeah.
Like, Marx was a
Very surface level interpretation of Marx. Okay.
They're just like, Adam Smith wasn't a capitalist. The thing is, that's the amazing thing. I'm saying, here's capitalism by Adam Smith. Like, that's not real capitalism. Like,
Did you know that Marx wasn't a real communist because he believed that specialization demands hierarchy? Got it.
Marx wasn't even a Marxist, you idiots. He's a fucking Marx was a communist.
You thought Marx was the Marxist? What a moron.
I guess I need to keep up more on like I have my TikTok, but I don't actually know what's happening on it because I'm a boomer.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people like that.
Only
commenters.
bullshit.
Bro. Then 𝗏𝗏𝗀 will be like, "Oh, you believe we should give poor people food? What a fucking collectivist! Get the fuck away from me! Holy shit! Like,
You want to disincentivize them from working hard? Loser.
yeah."
Like,
Don't you know if they have food to eat, they won't work as hard to get more food? Duh, forehead.
Bootstraps, motherfucker. Get there, pull them up.
Jesus.
The amazing thing is they're like, oh, if you work really hard and you're really smart, like that's like such a boomer thing. Like, if you work really hard and you're really smart, the disconnect from that is, of course, like most people
Doesn't
don't
advocate for child
really
labor?
smart by definition. Like, I just don't understand. You don't want life to be livable for them. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was 6'1".
What?
Dude, he could have beat up
What?
all the neo-Austrians.
Bro, she was breaking knees out here in the Congress courtroom?
Holy shit!
Like-
Someone said she's worrying about the wrong.
Ah, fuck.
A woman about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and oil pipelines. You will not have a good time, I promise. It doesn't go over well.
This is white woman's 9/11.
Yeah, that was the greatest tweet, bro.
Yeah.
I actually want to talk about
White
Ruth
women
Bader
right now
Ginsburg.
are just like they don't know what to do. The liberals in general. I saw the pick your fighter liberal tweets where it's like, I told my son RBG died and he said like Ruth Conda forever and like did like this, and dead serious tweet. And I was just like, and they get
Hell yeah,
so much
brother.
worse. Like, it was like
Super fucking base.
𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗁𝗏 Bozeman in heaven, Queen, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, King.
Oh
or some
my-
There was like an earthquake in LA.
Who gave the fucking Harry Potter readers Twitter? Just
There was an earthquake in LA, right? And there was this tweet saying like, "Oh, the earthquake was RBG like descending into heaven."
People are
Nice.
dying. Like, I don't.
Christ.
It's like,
Wait, ascending into hell or ascending into heaven, or both?
They said
Yeah,
descending into heaven.
Oh,
That's
it's
It makes no sense.
That's like my
God.
favorite Facebook quote. That's like the old famous Facebook post where it's like, my aunt died yesterday in a fire. Amazing. Her Bible remained unburned when they went through the rubble, and then it's just like, your aunt was just burned to death, and she's just like, the Bible wasn't. That's like the same level of fucking liberal tweeting. They're just they're ready to go to the polls. They know how to defeat fascism.
I actually wanted to, so what do you guys think of our Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't get the
I
fucking
think that it's going to
I'm
spur you
not-
to learn a lot more about what happens when people die in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Like,
I
don't get the idolization of her is just plain wrong. Like, she was
Obviously very
flawed
overrated.
It's like
person.
a standard neoliberal, yeah.
I'm not happy she died, obviously, but people need to be like, an 87-year-old with cancer died, and people are surprised. One, which is like, no, this is not surprising, and two, it's throwing our entire country into chaos.
Oh, apparently
It's not a good thing. It's an unelected 80-year-old official dying of cancer, and we don't know what to do. We should be able to prepare for that one, for 80-year-old
I mean,
people dying.
Who is
The
this?
Supreme
Young
Court is
lord.
just such
Well,
a
I
poorly
think it was
set up
a-
institution.
It was a
Yeah, we're
combination
kind
of.
of facing an unprecedented situation right now, right?
Yeah, it was kind of okay. So it was a combination of factors. So like people were begging Ruth Bader Ginsburg to essentially drop out of the Supreme Court in the Obama administration.
Right, a long time ago.
Yeah, and she didn't, right? Which, I mean, I understand the
She
motive
should've.
behind that, but she definitely should have, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, I understand that she wasn't perfect, right? And, I mean, I could probably argue with you on some of the things, like the pipeline and the Native Americans. Terrible, terrible consequences, right?
Panini,
Right?
I think our stream is glitching.
It's glitching?
Yeah.
It should be up, is it?
Could you check your latency or radio?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lagging a lot. I have it on my second monitor up here. It's not looking too good.
It is.
It's not very fog.
It's frame dipping.
This is not fog.
It's frame
Can
dipping.
you try it?
Okay. It was being.
Do you have tab open?
Do I have what?
Do you have is there something wrong with you? Wi-Fi is or
No, my Wi-Fi is 100%.
I think they're a little better now.
It might just be all the fucking RAM being used on my computer right now.
Can you stop ramming? Is that possible?
Not if I keep streaming, man.
Alright, well.
Doesn't seem to be lagging that much on right now.
Yeah, it looks better now, actually. Same for you? Left is...
Let me...
Had a bit of a frame dip right there.
Oh, a lot better. Okay, yeah, it's a lot better on my end.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
Yeah. So here, I will give my son a new little take on this. So I definitely agree that she wasn't really perfect. She did say a lot of fucked up shit. And I paid for shit too. However, I think acknowledging, I think there are a lot of consequences here. Right? So in terms of Trump being able to I don't know if this vote will pass.
You're breaking up a lot for me. I don't know if it's happening.
You got a lot of
having a pro senator and
𝗷𝗫𝗀𝗃, you're breaking up a lot. You're inaudible.
I froze. Okay.
Yeah, it must have been.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I was gonna say we have to keep in mind that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as an official, right? She was supposed to interpret the Constitution and say what the Constitution allowed. So she was supposed to look at the Constitution, interpret things from it, and then make decisions based off of it, right? Whether or not she thought a particular thing was mortal or not, her job was only to look at the Constitution, see if it was legal under the framework of the Constitution, and then use those decisions to basically impair her judgments, right? So, I mean, I understand that we have disagreements with the decision, but I think we also have to understand the legal backing behind a lot of her decisions as well. Not an excuse, but just kind of an explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree 100%, and I think that's also just an indictment of how freaking stupid the Supreme Court system is. Period.
Yeah, and I think the obligation to abide by a fucking 300-year-old document is dumb as shit, right? I think that's one of the biggest failures of America. While I do think the Constitution has a lot of good things in it, some of its shit is fucking terrible, like the Electoral College and a lot of other shit, right? And
the Electoral College would be fine without gerrymandering, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so I would say that a better thing to do would just not make a constitution entirely, just put a couple ideals up there, but then have the people decide what they want, and instead of having some fucking set of rules we have to abide by. But yeah, I think that's an indictment of our system for sure, Kosher. Yeah.
Jeez.
Any extra opinions on it? I guess we could move into more. We got 8 minutes left on the podcast, but if we wanted to move more into the what you believe the electoral implications of this will be, then you can expound on that if you want.
Of Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just how you think this is going to go.
I mean, it's not good. I mean, who's going to fill the seats? A bit of an uncertainty right now. I know Ted Cruz has said he's not going to do it, which is good, but I think Tom Cotton is also another likely and frightening.
Yeah, Tom Cotton is literally a fucking open fascist at this point.
Tom Cotton would be terrifying. Not as bad as
But
Ted
again,
Cruz.
electorally,
He'd be worse than Ted Cruz for sure.
Electorally, there's not a lot we can do to stop Trump's appointee, whoever it is, because there's a chance he gets it in before the election, and I don't think there's any way Biden wins this election, so we just kind of have to live with this reality now.
Really? Why do you not think that Biden will win?
The Democrats.
Like I said,
we all go vote for Biden.
Voter
Biden
suppression.
bitches. Biden 2020.
But
right?
voter suppression probably won't translate to 6 to 8% of the American vote.
It will make a significant. I mean, last election was 70,000 votes that made a difference.
Yeah, that's true. But like last election, we were only projecting like a 2 to 3 point win for Hillary Clinton, and the popular vote this projection is like 6 to 8. And the last election, it was within 1%.
Biden is sliding very much, and like not even like national polling, but even worse in like swing state polling, he's doing worse than Hillary.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked at the polls in a couple weeks.
It was going pretty well from like 1 to 2 months ago, but he's just fallen off a cliff.
I'm an admitted like boomer conspiracy theorist when it comes to any like polling information. Like I will speak like a Republican dad, and I'll be like, "You guys still believe that stuff?" It's like that's kind of where I am with all this, to be honest. Like anytime I give anyone of my family like a source about any country that isn't the U.S., they'll be like, "Yeah, you can't trust Brunei, they're liars." That's kind of really how I am about the electoral process. I just don't see Biden winning. Doesn't. I just. But I'm not
Wait,
super
but he's still.
on it.
It looks like Biden.
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I guess you can disagree. I mean, okay, so if we do trust statistics to some extent, which I think is fair, because I mean, I think like for the most part, I think most polling companies are pretty good. And I mean, not most, but I mean, like at least the A grade, they're like really good polling policies are that have on track. I think generally speaking, I think those results tend to be precise. However, things fluctuate a lot. So depending on like different events, just different like general perceptions, like depending on the population you sample from. Broadly speaking, when we look at aggregate data, we see that generally speaking, we see a trend towards Biden either just Biden maintaining a lead. I don't think that'll happen unless something significant happens.
I mean, Biden, looking at from the last,
and I don't know how much.
Since the last time I looked at these numbers, Biden has dropped 6 points in Florida.
Jesus, and he should be doing good in Florida. That's a bunch of old people,
Still up, barely.
Yeah, he's up. But
well, I mean, I think it went blue for. Didn't it go for blue for Obama?
National polling, he's still up.
He's still up by a sizable amount national polling in places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He's doing pretty fine.
And nationally, looks like in the last month we only have one plus Trump from Rasmussen, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, Biden has dropped.
He looks like he has, and in my state for sure he has. In Florida, it looks like he dropped 5 or 6 points.
National polling, he's dropped. So.
And national polling,
a couple of weeks, who knows?
He dropped
I don't think the debates actually mattered that much, but it could sway.
No, it didn't go down recently.
I disagree. The debates don't matter. Trump. In those debates, I wouldn't say he was a good debater by any means. He just bullyballed, but that's what the American people wanted. If Biden could compose himself on stage, Trump will make mincemeat out of him.
Oh, I mean, Biden's gonna be some angry old boomer. He was that in the Democratic debates, so I think it's gonna be heightened when he goes up against someone like Trump, who's gonna instigate him.
Trump's not gonna debate him in good faith at all. Trump literally brought up Bill Clinton's rape allegations.
And he'll probably make fun of it better.
And I don't think that wrong to do. If I was running against Hillary, I'd say, you guys have
a Joe,
a family scam threatening women. But fact of the matter is, for Trump to do that, he doesn't care. He has 40 allegations now against him. He doesn't care, and he's going to keep arguing in bad faith.
Yeah, that's true, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I generally think that when we look at the electoral position right now of Biden versus Trump, he's definitely in a weaker position than he was, say, a couple, 3-4 weeks ago. But from the data right now, it's still, I'd say, 70-30 in favor of Biden. However, of course, it's closing fast. So that could be for whatever reason you decide to put. And I think the big ticker for this election, just to end this conversation off because we're getting close to the ending time, would be essentially if Trump gets a vaccine pushed down or not. If he gets a vaccine published or put out into the population, I feel like he's going to do way better in the election than if he doesn't. That's just my opinion. But
Trump's nominating someone next week. He said the Republicans have been ready for this for 10 years.
shit.
Yeah, I think they need the Democrats would need 4 Republicans to not confirm the appointee, which I think they might have, right? Mitt Romney is
I think they have 7.
probably not going to do it. There's some other person, so I think they might actually have a chance at delaying it.
Yeah, if they do that,
all they have to do is delay it. All they have to do to delay it is obfuscate.
Well, if 4 Republicans just vote no, then
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have that and more already. I think we have like already 4, or at least 7 saying that they're not going to vote, just on principle.
Oh, nice. That's dope. I didn't know about that.
So,
But the thing is, Trump will get them to fall in line, right? A couple of these people are like up for re-election, and they need a Trump endorsement. So,
Maybe.
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
we'll see. Okay, I think my streams. I was coming on a little bit before, but okay. So, would you guys like we can go on for a little bit more. I guess we can also wrap up the New Austrian thing. I know we kind of just touched on it. That was because I think indicative of is like I think like what the Neo Austrians are doing, trying to like get people into Neo Austrianism, and like what Benjamin Politics is doing also with trying to like ally with the conservative pipe house. It's like I wish we had like a better pipeline to redirect people like that. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. It's
Yeah, that's true.
anything with Bosch.
Ending with Vosh. Yeah, Vosh is the final step. Lol. Anyways, so I think this is a good ending place for today's podcast. I'm glad all you guys came on. This was a really good experience. It's the first podcast, obviously.
Panini.
Yeah.
Panini, wait. We have questions. We're gonna do the Q&A thing.
Oh, we are? Okay.
I'm gonna-
I thought we were.
I'm gonna log in on my phone.
Are
one
we
sec.
opening? Are we opening the questions channel?
1 second. Yeah. I just need to log in on my phone.
Okay.
There we go, brother. All right, let's go. And I'll make an announcement. Yeah, so anyone on YouTube, we have a Discord server. If you guys want to join our Discord server and ask us questions and shit, I guess we'll address it for a little bit.
This is the questions
in the
channel,
comments.
by the way. If you guys want to ask
And then,
questions,
we'll
you can
do-
also do so in
then we'll do
YouTube
some
chat if you
closings.
want.
Yeah, and then we'll do closings, and then we'll chat everybody out, and I guess we'll end the stream for now.
Finio, want to ask questions?
How'd you guys like the podcast? I hope I know it's a little like sporadic, but I hope it was entertaining.
it was a good time.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to get some of the bigger creators on here. I think that's a good idea. Next week, we're hoping on doing something a little more, how will be the word? Contentious. We have some more diverse political beliefs. So we have Alex debates. I believe we're getting Jonah Axum on stream. Then, probably, maybe...
Here, wait, I have the list.
Maybe... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so next week, it looks like we are going to be... Holy shit, wait, whoa. Why is everybody typing this chat? It's weird. Okay. We will have J. William J. Sarah, or Sawaham, Alex debates, and probably some other... I'm going to see if we can get Uncle Reed back on, because I think he was on the road, so he disconnected. So we'll try again next week. That's the line.
Yeah, we're probably going to get... maybe we're gonna get 𝗙𝗶𝗀𝗁𝗁𝗍𝗓 on. He seemed interested in doing the podcast with us. So we just want to do more of like a contentious format where it's more like we provide some topics and they discuss and quote unquote debate. We just moderate that discussion. But that's essentially what we feel on the issue. But if we don't have any, Young Lord asks Harrison, where did you get the haircut? Because it looks good as fuck.
Bro.
It's a nice compliment.
Oh, okay.
Not gonna tell him?
You're not gonna answer the question.
Gotta keep it secret, you know.
Gotta keep a secret.
Alright.
Okay.
I respect that.
Doesn't look like we got any more questions on our side. So, with that being said, thanks all for coming on the Political Podcast or the Political Pundits Podcast. This was a great experience for all of us. thanks for watching, and to all the guests who came on today, thanks for coming as well.
Before we end the stream, what I wanted to do was, I guess, conclusions. So I believe we have each TikToker's TikTok linked in our bio description. I think since we had like a little trouble like live stream, we probably didn't, because we got like 20 or 30 current viewers. So what we're probably gonna do is, we'll probably just shout out like the VOD. So like after the VOD's uploaded, we'll probably just like shout out on our TikTok. I don't know if you guys want to do that, but I think that'd be the best way.
All right. Well, I think everyone should probably also go around and plug their shit.
Yeah. So like that'd probably be if you actually want to plug your shit and like make it probably more effective. Like probably the best way is if we all like boosted it. But I'll
go around and if you want to plug something, just plug it in the stream.
Yeah. Cool. I guess we can go with Kosher. You have anything?
Yeah, sure. My TikTok is at koshervideos. I am moving a lot of my stuff to YouTube. I have nothing up there yet. I took down some of my older debates because I'm trying to make an aesthetic channel to work on some stuff. So that's also Kosher White Wine. My Twitter is Kosher White Wine. I'm very active there talking, and I'll plug what I'm doing in regards to YouTube and my thoughts. And my Instagram is also Kosher White Wine. That's mostly for the memes and my personal BS. That's all.
Memes are based as fuck.
Awesome.
xi.jingping, you want to plug your shit?
Yeah, my TikTok username is 𝗷𝗘𝗃𝗃𝗃. My Twitter's linked in my bio. Go follow that, and that's about it.
Ryan?
Leftism Liberty. You want to check something out?
All right, yeah, I guess on TikTok, my ad's of course in the name, @leftism is liberty, and there's all other socials as well. And I'm trying to do more YouTube stuff, if I get some more followers over there, I'd like to do like political live streams, game live streams. Take like what Vosh and Destiny does, take all the bad parts of that out, and then you got me. That's what I'm trying to do.
Hell yeah, brother. That sounds super nice. All right. Yeah. So for those of you who will be listening, after or before the VOD, we're the base leftists. Essentially, I think we kind of formed like a bunch of like Discord, like kind of like
we're just a bunch of Discord
debate bros.
Debaters.
Yeah, we're a bunch of Discord debate bros and sisters. We got together. We kind of made a group. We made TikTok. We got a little popular, and we're hopefully gonna be. We're actually platforming a debate at 8 o'clock with the Paleo Libertarians, so that should be fun. If you guys want to watch that. But yeah, if you want to watch more of us, we're gonna have more debates in the future. You just go to our TikTok at Base Leftist, and we have a link tree there with our Discord server, which we're using to do these podcasts from now. And we also have a YouTube channel in which we will upload some debates, and we already have some debates uploaded. We also are doing a D&D campaign, which we'll hopefully continue on Sunday. We'll have to check with the other member. But yeah. So thank you guys for all coming on. I hope we can have you on again sometime, maybe in the next coming weeks, if TikTok doesn't die. I'd love to have all you guys on again, because it was really fun, and I genuinely appreciate you guys being on here for our first podcast. So
Awesome.
with that being said.